So really quickly, there's two things you need to know. One is that they gave me a radio mic, which means that I get overexcited about using my hands. So it's going to be a bumpy half hour, but bear with me. The other thing is, has anyone here heard me do a presentation at ANU before? Right, okay, cool. So the saddest part about that is that there are a few people that have heard me speak in the front row. I have a lisp. It's highly possible I will spit on you. So for those of you that have heard me speak before and are sitting in the front row, bad decision making. But fingers crossed I'll try and spray over this way just for being fair. All right, so as Tanya very kindly introduced me, my name is Sue. I work in the community sector. I've made a career out of it. I've been working in the community sector for about 14 years. I've been very privileged to lead some organisations, work in other organisations, volunteer in other organisations, and the highlight is I get to come and speak to people in big rooms quite often, which is really nice because I'm a parent of small children, which means at home no one listens to me. I haven't put up a PowerPoint presentation today because they make me want to stab my own eye out. So I kind of didn't want to do that to you guys. So kindly, if you are sitting there with a laptop because you like to take notes, I really hope that what we talk about today will resonate with you so you don't need notes. If you are sitting there with a laptop because you are looking at cat memes, I back you. I absolutely get it. Sometimes I'm at work and I'm in a meeting and I go, things will be better if I just look at a cat roller skating. But if you could pull yourself away from that, I would also really appreciate that as well. But understand if you can't do that. So it's fine. So does anyone know what we mean when we start talking about being an ethical bystander or an ethical leader? Does anyone have any thoughts about what kind of springs to mind when we talk about that? Is anyone awake? Okay, a few people might be. So the word ethical, what does that make us start to think about? Pardon? Morality? Yep, that's not bad. Unless you're a vampire, that's hard. Anyone, sorry, someone else?
Doing the right thing.
Doing the right thing, that's awesome.
Standards of what you're willing to accept and what you're willing to speak out against.
Standards about what you're willing to accept and what you're willing to speak out against. You kind of win, you could go home. Yeah, that's... All right, in the middle here?
Activism.
Activism, absolutely.
Appropriateness and adequateness.
Appropriateness and adequateness. It's a good word, I'm going to use that today. That is absolutely right. Did you have something?
Standing up for others.
Standing up for others, absolutely. Standing up for ourselves. Anyone else? What about when we use the word bystander? It's really cute that you guys all dress the same, by the way. I really like it. Because none of you look like you got here today and went, oh, we're wearing the same thing, how embarrassing. Because you've all actually got like a t-shirt underneath, so you could have actually changed. I love it. So, bystander. When we say bystander, what do we mean? Yep. Witness to an event but you're not involved in. You can go have an early mark with that guy. You're all over it. All right, anyone else got anything to add to bystander? Yes? Passive? Yep, absolutely. Often when we use the word bystander, we're talking about someone in a passive context. Anything else? All right, today, was that a hand? No? Okay, sorry. Like everyone in a quarter of the room just went, please don't talk to me. So what I want to do today is I want to talk about the word passive and bystander together, and I want us to start to think about bystander as being active rather than passive. So being an ethical bystander or an ethical leader is actually about making a decision to be the person that says something, does something, or intervenes on the thing that's not okay. All right? So I grew up, I'm not old, so I'm not going to say when I was young, because I am. But when I was growing up, I grew up in an environment where if there was an argument in the shopping centre or there was a kid being backhanded in the car park because, they stood on gum or something, that you put your head down, it was none of your business. So you put your head down and you keep walking, right? None of your business. You heard screaming from the next door neighbours, head down. None of your business, don't get involved. And I remember an older person in my life at one point where we were at the supermarket and there was a kid getting flogged over nothing. That's a very Australian kind of word, isn't it? Flogged. So they were getting smacked, hit, whatever you want to term it, for nothing. I think they probably asked for something in the grocery store one too many times. And the parent backhanded them. And I said to this grown-up that I was with, I was like, that's not okay, they're getting hurt. And the response was, don't say anything, you could get stabbed. And I was like, yes, those Webeck boxes look very sharp. Yes, I could lose a limb to a box of Weebix. That's going to be an interesting ER report. So what we're doing now as a community, as a society, is we're going, actually, we have to intervene. Yeah? We have to intervene in some way. That doesn't mean that we all need to quickly race out and go buy an eye mask and a superhero cape, although I respect your right to wear one, if that's what you want to do. But what it does mean is that we need to take a minute and we need to think about ourselves as human beings in the world, and we need to go, what kind of standard, what kind of world do we want to live in? And what part of that do I have a role, a responsibility, or an eligibility to change? What is the bit that I can do better? I was talking at a forum a couple of months ago and it was talking about global change. That makes my head hurt. Because I can't be everywhere all of the time, and I'm also not the person that should be all of the places all of the time. There are other people that form part of the jigsaw puzzle. There are millions of people that form part of a jigsaw puzzle about us all living in a better world. Every one of you in here form a part of that massive jigsaw puzzle about doing something a little bit better. When we talk about global change, people often get paralysed with fear and they go, but I suffer from terrible jet lag, I can't go all over the world. Yeah? Well, maybe that's just my response. So it's about bringing that down and going, okay, what part of global do I own? So I own my community. I participate in my family. I try not to before the hours of 9 a.m, but sometimes you have to. So you participate in your family. I participate in my workplace. I participate in my community. I volunteer. I participate in my local Woolworths shop. When I go there to do my groceries, I'm participating in that shop. Yeah, that's when you go to Subway, when you go to, the coffee shop, when you go get sushi, which apparently you all like, according to that matrix up there, you're participating in that environment. So you have the capacity to make change on that level. I'm not asking you all to stand here and make an oath that you're going to be an ethical bystander, and in 6 weeks' time we'll just see you fronting, a committee into something at the UN and talking on behalf of the rest of the globe. That's not what we're talking about. Talking about changing our environment on a day-by-day basis. This stuff can be scary. So being an ethical bystander means sometimes intervening in dangerous or abusive environments, making a decision to somehow impact change in a particular moment. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples about that and talk you through what that kind of means, because people often get paralysed by fear. If I intervene in those two drunk guys having an argument at the pub on Saturday night and I get hit, there goes my modelling career. Well, it's true. You don't want to get hit in your moneymaker. So what do? Or if you are the guy who intervenes with the really drunk girl out on a Thursday night, because it's cheaper to go out on Thursday nights if you're a uni student. If you are the guy that goes to kind of rescue the young woman who's intoxicated and being harassed, do you look like you're harassing her? Are you, opening yourself up to being criticised or rebuked or any of those sorts of things? If you're a young woman and you try and save another young woman, do you just look like, I'm going to say it, brace your ears, a cock blocker? Yeah, I said it. It's out there, guys. And it's on video. Sorry, Mum. So these are the things that run through people's heads, not what do I do to do it better, what is the impact on me? And we're trained to think like that. From really little, from really young, we live in a society where we often kind of treat children like, you know, they don't have a lot to offer the world, they should be seen and not heard, even though we don't say that in public anymore, they're not really entitled to an opinion kind of thing. So how do you grow up and grow out of that to actually go, I've got something to say, I want to make this a better place, I can fix or I can break this situation in two for a little minute for this particular person to make a difference. So how do we do that? So I actually love this day because it always falls on like a weekend really close to when I've been out. And I have small children, so I go out like once a year. But trouble follows me. It's like, it might be the cape that I wear, but trouble follows me. So I was out a couple of weeks ago with a few friends of mine, and we were having dinner. We're at a local pub, so yes, I had a schnitzel. And we'd kind of been conversing, we were very civilised, so we'd had a couple of glasses of red wine. Then it got to be a little bit later at night and I realised that my partner had successfully put my children to sleep, so I was like, woohoo, bring on the shots! So we'd had a few to drink, and all of a sudden this hens party walked in. Doom. That's like annihilation for anyone else in a licensed premise when you get this shriek of like 30 young women in fluoro pink with some dangling penises celebrating a hens party. I assure you there are classier ways to do this. And so in they walked and we were all like, oh, all right, let's just see how this plays out. And so they were kind of fine, they were drinking, you know, their sparkling shardy or whatever it was, and giggling really loudly, and then they started heckling some of the guys in my group. Now, the guys that I was with, there are a number of them that were quite muscular, some might say aesthetically pleasing. I wouldn't, because I'm not into that sort of thing. So, you know, really nice kind of guys, and they were heckling them, and we were sort of standing there going, oh, this is a bit off, this is not okay. Then one of them came and touched one of my friends. Like, just was like, hi, beep. And I was like, since when is that okay? Like, when do you walk up and introduce yourself by groping someone? That's not actually the international symbol for it's a pleasure to meet you. Even on a Friday night after you've had a few drinks. And they were relentless. They kept going, and the guys were being a little bit macho and kind of laughing it off and going, oh, you know, whatever, happens to me all the time, ha 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 ha. And I was like, no, it doesn't, guys. I've known you for a long time and I've not known anyone to touch you. So I eventually, you have a dirty mind. Yeah, that's a fact. So I wandered over to this group of girls and I was like, hi guys, how are you going? Having a great night? Stop touching people! And they got really rowdy and they were like, we're allowed to, it's a hens party. And I was like, no, there's not a universal code for touching people that makes it okay because it's a hens party. You don't get a free pass. You might get free entry into your local trashy nightclub, but you don't get free entry into people's personal space. So we had this little conversation and I said to them, what you're doing isn't actually okay. And quite frankly, if it was a group of men on their bucks party and one of them came and touched you, all hell would break loose. So why is it okay the other way around? Oh, they're guys, they can protect themselves. And I was like, well, no, that's not fair. Let's look at the male sexual assault statistics. Not true, not a fact. They shouldn't be required to look after themselves. They shouldn't be required to come out on a Friday night to have a few lazy cocktails. Yes, they were men who drink cocktails. And then be groped. And anyway, we had this little exchange. I went back to the table. Then they started yelling things at me, including such lines as, "Ah, you stupid poofter." And I was like, but I'm just a very well-dressed lesbian. this old thing. So it went back and forth and it went back and forth, and eventually I went and had a bit firmer conversation and said to them, what you're doing is actual harassment. It isn't okay. It's not okay to call me names. I'm an adult. I work in an area where I deal with this stuff all of the time, albeit I'm generally sober. But this isn't okay. You can't behave like this. Nor can you behave like this to other people in my group or anyone else in the pub. It's not okay. So anyway, they obviously kind of got the point. They started to get a little bit embarrassed. A couple of the girls in the group were like, we should probably go. Let's find somewhere else. Oh, this place is crap. And I was like, no, it's not. It's pumping. So they left, and we went outside shortly after because at this point it was 10:30, so I turned into a pumpkin at 10:45. So we went outside, and there was this group, and they were harassing a couple of young men. And at this point, they were harassing a couple of young men who would have been lucky if they'd reached puberty. Like, they were probably 15 or 16. And they didn't know what to do. And one of the women was actually trying to take the shirt off a young man. Right? Like, actually physically holding him, trying to take his shirt off, and was touching him and leering all over him. It's not okay. It doesn't matter who's perpetrating that kind of behaviour. Not okay. So I went over and was like, this is absolutely not okay. You are assaulting someone now. You need to walk away. It isn't okay. So one of the hens party decided to dig her teeth in and took a swing. Right? So that's the bit where I go, crap, I should have thought about that. But like, they were a group of young women who looked like, I don't know, 3 drinks would sink them. And it didn't seem like they were going to turn into that group of people. But apparently they did. So one of them took a swing. Lucky, I can duck. So I ducked. And that worked out okay, except that it was hard to get back up. And I stood there and I was like, did that really just happen? And she was like, yeah, I took a swing at you. And I was like, well, don't be proud because you missed. But and I said to her, I don't understand at what point me intervening and telling you that your behaviour wasn't okay made you decide that you probably wanted to go spend a small custodial sentence for assault. Like, that seems like that got out of hand really quickly for you, not so much me. But let's talk about this. And they wouldn't, I could not access them. I don't go over well with that type of demographic of young women. They don't kind of see me as their peeps. So they weren't listening to me, they just kept kind of banging up against me, and it wasn't working. So I was standing there, I was like, what do I do? Because if I send in one of the guys, they're going to get hurt. And then that's not okay. Also, they all feel a little bit kind of down because they've all been harassed. I was like, the 2 other women that I'm with basically licked alcohol off the bar, so they're not capable of stringing a sentence together. What do I do? And I was there and I was like, all right, if I call the police, they'll be here in 20 minutes, which means that these women will be gone. But something has to happen, more than me saying to them, your behaviour isn't okay. So I was like, I don't know what to do. And then all of a sudden I was like, I'm going to talk to the bouncer. Now, sometimes you don't want to talk to a bouncer because they're bouncers. And sometimes they're not the people that are going to kind of step in and step up. They're often just going to give you a lecture or just smile and nod at you or pat you on the head. But I knew the bouncer at this place and I was like, oh yeah, he's a good guy. He's got his head screwed on okay. I'll have a chat to him. So I went and had a chat to him. He went and spoke to the group and was like, look, we've had a couple of complaints. I really want you to move on, but what I want you to know is what you're doing is not okay and someone might actually call the police. So old mate, little pixie person, it was only about this big, like, took a swing at him and he was like, okay, well now we call the police. But everyone had tried to intervene at some point. So at some point in that, I made a decision that the behaviour wasn't okay. I tried to kind of have a conversation with them loosely and, you know, hang out with them and be kind of peers, and then I realised that wasn't going to work. So then I tried to be a little bit more forceful and take a stance about what I was actually saying, and that resulted in someone taking a swing. And then I decided that I was out. There was nothing I could do that would keep me safe or would actually have any impact, but somebody else needed to know about it. So I went and spoke to a bouncer. And sometimes that's the best thing that you can do, is go, that behaviour isn't okay, but I'm out. I don't feel safe enough, I don't feel like I've got the skills, or I don't know how to approach this, but I'm going to tell someone else. And that's not a cop-out, that's not kind of a hospital pass or being dodgy or anything like that. Sometimes that's the best thing you can do, is make someone else aware of the situation. And so what I'm asking you to do is actually participate in a world where you make a decision about what type of behaviour is okay and what is not, and where you're going to intervene. And by intervene, I don't mean grab your superhero cape and go flying in. I mean make a rational decision about what you can actually do. Sometimes the best thing you can do, and I parked in a car park the other day, going in to buy some groceries, probably yogurt. Parked, and there was a woman smoking in her car with a baby that would have been no more than 6 months old. Windows up, smoking away. It's actually illegal in the ACT to smoke in a car with a child under the age of 12, I think it is, under 12. So it's not okay. That child was completely defenceless, had no idea what was going on, but this woman was going nutso on her mobile phone too, and using words that I don't know how to spell. And was being really she was really escalated, really full on. And I kind of looked at that situation and I went, oh, I can't intervene on that. Like, there's no de-escalating that woman. No good is going to come from actually knocking on the window and going, hey, that's not going to change anything. She probably will just stub her cigarette out on my eyeball. So I rang Crime Stoppers and just reported it, gave the rego number, gave the time, gave the location, and that kind of stuff. And they were like, yep, great, that's enough information for us to follow on. We'll follow up and issue a warning and a citation. That was the best I could do in that situation. I had my kids with me as well. They didn't need to see their mum get ashed out on. So, you know, that's the best that you can do. So different situations require a different response, but you need to be prepared to have a response. You need to think about what type of responses you're going to have, where you're going to actually have a response, or you know, call someone or tell someone else, or those sorts of things, because there's no point in that moment where bad stuff is going on standing there going, all right, what am I going to do? I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. How do I feel about that? Oh, do you think maybe I've got some words that'll help? Or, I know, I'm going to jump rope. I'm going to cause a distraction and jump rope. That's what I'm going to do. Yeah, you need to have those kind of plans in advance, because none of us really think well under pressure, regardless of, you know, how much we like to. I work in crisis intervention. I have a list of things that I'm willing to do and how I do it and that kind of stuff. So it means when there's a crisis, I can actually do my job and intervene, because you can't make that stuff up on the spot. And this stuff isn't hard. I was at the grocery shops with my kids the other day. I have 4-year-old twins. They're pretty good human beings, except I'd like them more if they slept. So therefore, we're in the shops. I'm, you know, consumed by buying things at the grocery store, which I find really hard. And one of my kids goes to me, that's not okay. And I was like, I got the plain yogurt like you like. What do you mean that's not okay? And she was like, no, a man just walked past all of those women folding clothes and whistled at them and was like, oi, and then yelled at them and then clapped his hands and then was like, yeah, you disappear. And she said, I just didn't like the way he was talking to them. And I went, oh, okay, well, let's have a bit of a chat about this. And we looked around, and it was actually the supervisor. It was the supervisor that was clicking fingers and clapping hands and, you know, being really dismissive and quite rude and abhorrent to the women that were folding clothes back onto the shelf. And I said to them, well, what do you want to do? And one of my kids was like, well, I want to go ask the people if they're okay. And I was like, oh, okay, well, we could do that. Let's mosey on over there. And one of my kids said, are you okay? That man was really mean, and I want to see if you're okay. And the women were all like, oh, that's really lovely. Like, you know, he does that all the time. He's not a very nice person. He's really hard to work for, but we, you know, need to pay the bills. Ah, ha, ha. My kids are like, what are bills? And they were like, oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't nice. You shouldn't be treated like that. And I was like, yeah, best people in the world. And the women were like, oh, thank you, that means a lot. And off we went doing our shopping. My kids were kind of mulling over, and I thought that they were just trying to concoct a plan to keep me up all night. But they were mulling it over, and we got to the checkout, and one of them said to me, I want to go talk to the boss. And I was like, I am the boss. And she was like, no, the boss of the store. I was like, oh yeah, fair call, I'm not that boss. And let's be true, I was just joking, I'm totally not the boss at home. So we went and spoke to the boss of the store, and I said to them, my kids want to talk to you. And they were like, oh, okay, here's a candy. And they were like, And so they were like, you've got someone who is a boss here who wasn't being very nice. And he talked to some people really in a not nice way, and I heard it and it made me feel unhappy. And I'm not the person that was being spoken to like that. And the boss was like, oh, okay, well, can you point them out to me? I'm really sorry that happened, blah, blah, blah. All of that kind of stuff. And I was like, they were like, can we get your contact details? And I was like, we're just going to get brushed off here. And I was like, okay. 24 hours later, we got an email saying, thank you very much for letting us know. We really appreciate that information. We've actually enrolled that staff member in a supervisor training course, particularly around sensitivities to working with staff, because we spoke to the other staff members and they raised a number of concerns about how they're being treated. 4 years old. 4 years old, and they can affect that change just by standing there and going, what can I do to make that person's day a little bit easier? So none of us have the right to sit here and go, there's nothing I can do. Because if a 4-year-old can do something, we can all do something. And that could be talking to someone, it could be raising awareness with a bouncer or a senior person in your residence, one of the deputy heads or the heads of hall. It could be talking to the counselling staff here and letting them know that something not okay is happening. Could be talking to student services, calling the police, calling Crime Stoppers. I could keep going, but we all have a role to play. It's just about making the time to have a moment with yourself and going, what role do I want to play? How do I make the world a little bit better? And I'm not asking huge amounts from anyone in this room. All I'm saying is, tomorrow, try and be a little bit better than you were today. Because I tell you what, in a month, in a week, in 2 days' time, whatever, you will turn around and go, yeah, I'm all right. Yeah? And actually, there's no bigger reward than that. There's no bigger reward than being able to wake up and go, I actually feel good about the person I am. And having a moment and going, I don't like how I responded to that thing yesterday, is also okay. I do that all the time. I wake up and I go, I should have said something about that. I should have intervened on that. Maybe there was something I could have done there. But then take the moment to go, what have I learnt from not intervening? What have I learnt from not participating in that moment? Where do I put that in my arsenal of things that I can attack? So where do I go, all right, next time I'm faced with a situation like that, this is the thing I'm going to do. All right? Because if you start kind of getting down on yourself for everything that you miss, then you'll feel pretty crappy. And if you jump on everything that you see all of the time, then you probably do need to go out and buy yourself a cape. So make it an ongoing learning decision. And this isn't about this year as participating in the leadership team at ANU. This isn't about being a leader within your hall. This is about a life skill. Doesn't matter if you go into computing, engineering, mathematics, be a shopkeeper, whatever it is that you decide to do, this is a skill for life. All right? So that's all I'm asking. Just try and be a little bit better tomorrow than you are today. And then everything will be better in 10 years' time. Actually, that's a lie, but we can keep moving, yeah? All right, thank you very much.